I've always believed that when you move into a quiet suburban neighborhood, you expect peace. The kind of peace where you can hear birds in the morning, neighbors wave as they mow their lawns, and you don't have to double-check your car doors every night. That's what I thought I was getting when I moved into Maple Creek, a community proudly run by the local HOA. At first, things were perfect. My house sat on a corner lot, overlooking the small pond the HOA bragged about in every flyer. The neighbors seemed nice enough, but then there was Karen. She lived directly across from me, the self-proclaimed eyes and ears of the HOA. She always had a clipboard, always watching. The kind of neighbor who'd take pictures if your trash can was out a few minutes past collection time. Still, I tried to keep things civil. I waved, smiled, and avoided confrontation. Everything changed one morning. It was early, just after sunrise, when I walked out to my car, coffee in hand, ready to head to work. That's when I noticed something was off. My car door was slightly open. At first, I thought maybe I had forgotten to lock it the night before, but as I got closer, my stomach sank. The window was shattered. Tiny shards of glass glittered across the seat and driveway like ice. My glove compartment was ripped open. Loose papers, receipts, and my registration were scattered everywhere. My phone charger was gone, and so was the small emergency cash I kept in the console. My heart raced as I looked around the neighborhood, searching for any sign of who might have done it. The street was empty, quiet, too quiet. I remember just standing there, stunned. That uneasy feeling that someone had been inside my car, touching my things, made my skin crawl. I immediately called the police to report the break-in. They told me they'd send an officer to take a look. While I waited, I started picking up pieces of glass, just trying to make sense of it. That's when I noticed something strange. A small, muddy footprint on the driver's seat, too small to be an adult's. That's when my suspicion first began to form. You see, Karen had a teenage son, around 15 or 16, who had a reputation in the neighborhood. I'd seen him wandering around late at night with his friends, skateboarding down the street, throwing rocks at mailboxes. I never said anything because I didn't want to start drama. But that footprint, it looked like something that might belong to someone his size. When the officer arrived, I gave him all the details, showed him the damage, and told him about the footprint. He said they'd dust for prints and check with nearby houses for camera footage. I had my own security camera, but unfortunately, the angle didn't quite capture the front of my driveway. It only faced the porch. Still, I felt hopeful they'd find something. But what I didn't know at that moment was that this simple car break-in would spiral into one of the most unbelievable neighborhood confrontations I'd ever experienced. A few hours later, after the police left, I went inside to calm down. That's when I heard loud knocking on my front door. When I opened it, there she was, Karen. She stood there, arms crossed, face flushed with anger. Even without words, I could tell she was fuming, and the look in her eyes told me everything. She already had a story in her head, and somehow I was the villain in it. That day, the rumors began spreading faster than I could imagine. Karen told anyone who'd listen that I had staged the break-in myself. She claimed I was trying to make the neighborhood look unsafe, that I wanted to get attention or file an insurance scam. At first, I laughed it off. It sounded too ridiculous to take seriously. But then, I started noticing the way people looked at me. Neighbors who used to wave started avoiding eye contact. The HOA president emailed me, asking if I was creating unnecessary panic. Even one of the board members hinted that they'd heard things. It was surreal. My car had been broken into, and somehow I was being treated like the suspect. That night, as I stood outside staring at my car, I noticed movement across the street. Karen's curtains shifted, and I saw her peeking out, phone in hand. It was clear she was watching me, documenting everything I did, like she was building some twisted case against me. I felt trapped in my own home. Days went by, and the situation only got worse. The police hadn't gotten back to me yet about the fingerprints, but Karen kept pushing her story. She told neighbors that she knew for a fact I had staged the whole thing because no real thief would target a car in such a nice neighborhood. Meanwhile, her son kept hanging around near my driveway, pretending to play with his basketball, glancing over like he was proud of something. Something about that look haunted me. I tried to let the investigation run its course, but Karen's gossip was doing real damage. A few neighbors even suggested I should apologize to the community for causing such drama. Can you imagine that? Being the victim and somehow being the one blamed. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. I just wanted the truth to come out. Then one afternoon, I got a call from the detective handling my case. His tone was different, focused, serious. He said they had lifted fingerprints from inside my car and gotten a match. At first, I assumed it would be some stranger, maybe a local thief, but when he told me whose prints they found, I froze. It was Karen's son. My mind went blank for a moment, then everything clicked, the muddy footprint, his nervous glances, Karen's sudden accusations. She hadn't been trying to help, she'd been trying to cover for him. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking, heart pounding. I couldn't believe it. For days she'd been spreading lies about me, calling me a fraud, turning the neighborhood against me, all while knowing her own son was the one who did it. That evening, police cruisers pulled up across the street. I watched as they walked up to Karen's door. She came outside, looking confused at first, then panicked. Her son followed behind, shoulders slumped, head down. I couldn't hear what was being said, but the look on her face told the whole story. And yet, as she looked across the street, locking eyes with me, there was no guilt, only anger. That was the moment I realized this wasn't over, not even close. Because when someone like Karen gets caught, they don't apologize, they double down. And I had no idea just how far she'd go next. The night the police came to Karen's house, I thought it would be the end of the nightmare. I thought the truth was finally out, that everyone would see what she really was. A manipulative neighbor who tried to cover up her son's crime. But I should have known better, because in neighborhoods like mine, with people like Karen, getting caught doesn't mean defeat. It just means she finds a new way to fight back. The next morning, I woke up to a strange sight. There were flyers taped to mailboxes up and down the street, all printed on the same bright yellow paper. I grabbed one from my own mailbox, and my stomach turned when I read the bold headline. Neighborhood Scam Alert. Fake break-in used to harass family. Underneath was a full paragraph of nonsense, claiming that I had fabricated evidence to frame a minor and damage a respectable family's reputation. She didn't use my name, but everyone knew who it was about. It was pure insanity. Just 24 hours after the police confirmed her son was responsible, she was already trying to rewrite the story. The HOA board called an emergency meeting the next day. I was invited, but honestly, it felt more like an ambush than a meeting. When I arrived, half the board members were whispering before I even sat down. Karen, of course, was already there, acting like the victim. She told them I had bullied her family, that I had exaggerated the damage, and that I was harassing her child. She even claimed the police were still investigating me for false reporting. Every word out of her mouth was another layer of lies. I sat there, stunned, trying to defend myself while she twisted everything. And the worst part? The board didn't seem to know what to believe. That's when I realized something important. In communities run by people like Karen, truth doesn't matter as much as perception. And she was winning the perception battle. Over the next few days, I noticed small, calculated things happening around my house. My trash cans were suddenly left in the middle of the street instead of being returned to my driveway. A fine notice appeared in my mailbox, supposedly from the HOA, for leaving debris visible from the road. That debris was the broken glass from my car, which the police had yet to fully clear. Then came another fine, and another. It became clear Karen was using her influence within the HOA to punish me. Whether she was friends with someone on the board or simply manipulating them, I didn't know, but the message was clear. If I didn't back off, life here was going to get miserable. I tried to keep my head down, hoping things would quiet down. But then, one evening, I came home from work to find my car vandalized again. This time, someone had poured soda over the windshield and smeared ketchup on the door handles. It wasn't just vandalism. It was mockery. That same night, my security camera finally caught something. The footage showed two figures sneaking near my driveway, one of them clearly Karen's son. The other, hard to tell, but it looked like one of his friends. I forwarded the video to the police immediately, thinking that would end it once and for all. But when the officer came by, he sighed and told me something that made my blood boil. He said Karen had already called earlier, claiming I was harassing her family with fake footage. She was ahead of me. Again. It felt like living in a twisted version of reality, where no matter what evidence I had, she always found a way to spin it. A few days later, I got another email from the HOA, this time saying they were reviewing complaints about me, creating disturbances and filing false reports. That was it. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I decided to fight back, but carefully. I knew if I lost my temper, she'd twist that too. So I started documenting everything. Every fine notice, every flyer, every suspicious incident. I kept copies, dates, and even printed screenshots from the community Facebook group where Karen had been posting vague warnings about dangerous neighbors. I also invested in better cameras, ones that covered every angle of my property. For a while, things went silent. Karen stopped making public accusations. Her son stopped hanging around near my yard. It felt like the calm after a storm. But I could sense it wasn't real peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before something worse. Then, one weekend morning, it happened. I woke up to find several police cars parked in front of my house. Again. Only this time, they weren't there to help me. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint claiming I had been stalking neighborhood kids and installing hidden cameras to spy on people. It was ridiculous but serious. The officers had to question me, check my cameras, even look around my property. It was humiliating. And as they left, I noticed Karen standing across the street, arms folded, smirking. She'd found her newest weapon. Later that day, I got another letter from the HOA. They were launching a formal investigation into violations of community privacy rules. That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation anymore. She was trying to force me out of the neighborhood. I started feeling the pressure from every direction. Neighbors avoided me. A few whispered when I walked by. My mailbox got filled with anonymous letters. "Move out. You don't belong here. We know what you did." It was like living in a movie, but not the kind you'd want to star in. Still, I refused to give up. I reached out to the police again and explained everything. The false complaints, the harassment, the smear campaign. This time, the detective seemed more understanding. He told me the department had records of every call from my address, and interestingly, most of the anonymous tips were traced back to the same phone number. It belonged to Karen. That was the moment I felt a shift. For weeks, I had been on the defensive, reacting to everything she did. But now, I finally had something solid, proof that she was behind the harassment. The detective told me to stay calm, let them handle it. But deep down, I knew Karen wouldn't stop unless she faced consequences. A few days later, officers showed up at her house again, this time not for her son, but for her. They questioned her about the harassment, the false reports, and the vandalism. I watched from my window as she argued with them, her voice raised, face red, waving her arms in protest. She looked furious, cornered, and that's when I realized something. People like Karen don't fear justice, they fear embarrassment. They fear losing control of the story. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, I woke up to find something terrifying in my mailbox. A single envelope, no return address. Inside was a photo of my car, taken at night. On the back, in shaky handwriting, were just 3 words. "You'll regret this." My heart sank. This wasn't over, not even close. And if Karen was behind that message, it meant she was getting desperate. Because when someone like her starts losing control, that's when they become dangerous. That photo in my mailbox changed everything. Up until then, I thought Karen's behavior, the lies, the rumors, the harassment, was all about control. But that photo showed something darker. It wasn't just about control anymore, it was intimidation, a message meant to scare me into silence. For a few minutes, I just stood in my driveway holding that photo, the morning air cold against my skin. I kept glancing around, half expecting to see someone watching from a window. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound made me flinch. That's when I realized just how much this entire situation had gotten under my skin. I wasn't dealing with a petty neighborhood dispute anymore. This had become a full-blown obsession, and I was her target. I called the detective again and told him about the photo. He took it seriously. They said they'd send a unit to collect it and check for fingerprints or DNA. In the meantime, he advised me to stay alert and make sure my security cameras were recording 24/7. For the next few days, I barely slept. Every night I sat by my front window watching the street. The shadows felt longer, the silence heavier. Then on the third night, something happened that would finally expose everything. It was just after midnight when I heard the sound, faint but unmistakable, footsteps on gravel. Slow, careful, coming from the side of my house. My heart pounded as I looked at the security feed on my phone. The infrared camera showed 2 figures near my car again. One of them was clearly Karen's son. The other was Karen herself. They were crouched by my car, whispering, moving quickly. I zoomed in and saw what they were doing. She was pressing something against the side of my car door. It looked like a small bag. My instincts told me not to go outside. Not yet. I quietly called the police and told them someone was tampering with my property again. They said a unit was already nearby and would arrive within minutes. I kept the cameras rolling as I watched Karen and her son finish whatever they were doing, then rush back toward their house. Moments later, police lights flooded the street. The look on her face when she realized she'd been caught, it's something I'll never forget. The officers examined my car and found what she'd planted. A small bag filled with coins, broken glass, and what looked like a few of my old car receipts. She was trying to stage it again, make it look like I was pulling another insurance scam. But this time, she'd been caught on camera. The police reviewed the footage, and by the end of the night, they had enough evidence to charge her with tampering and harassment. Her son, who had already been warned for the original break-in, was also taken in for questioning. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. The next morning, the news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The same people who'd believed Karen's lies were now whispering about her. The flyers disappeared overnight. The HOA board, which had been so quick to side with her before, sent me a formal apology. A bland, emotionless email, but still an acknowledgement that they'd been wrong. But despite all that, I didn't feel victorious. I felt drained, exhausted. I'd moved to this neighborhood to find peace, and instead, I'd been living in constant tension. It's amazing how one person's obsession can infect an entire community, how lies can spread faster than truth, and how fear can make people forget what's right. A week later, Karen's house went quiet. Her car disappeared from the driveway. Rumor had it she was staying with relatives while dealing with the charges. Her son was reportedly enrolled in a different school outside the district. For the first time in months, Maple Creek felt calm again. The air felt lighter. Still, I couldn't shake the unease completely. Every time I walked to my car, I'd glance around, half expecting her to be there, watching from behind her curtains. The damage she'd done wasn't just to my car, it was to my sense of safety. But life slowly began to move forward. One afternoon, as I was cleaning out my garage, a neighbor I barely knew came over. She told me she was sorry for believing the rumors, that she'd fallen for Karen's lies like everyone else. She said something that stuck with me, that people like Karen thrive on control, and when they lose it, they'll destroy anyone who threatens their version of reality. She was right. It wasn't about me. It was about Karen's need to be the center of attention, the self-appointed hero of the neighborhood. When her son got caught, that image cracked, and she couldn't handle it. The detective later told me the fingerprint analysis from the photo envelope confirmed what I already knew. It was Karen's. She'd written the threat herself. She confessed to it after they confronted her with the evidence. That photo, the one that had terrified me, became the final piece of proof that brought everything crashing down. The HOA board eventually removed her from all community involvement. They even introduced a new rule. No resident could serve in any official HOA role while under investigation for harassment or criminal activity. Ironically, her downfall made the neighborhood better, safer. A few months passed. My car was repaired, the cameras still up, and life finally settled into something resembling normal. But sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through my old footage, the one of her sneaking across my yard, and wonder what had really been going through her mind. Did she ever feel guilt, shame, or was she so lost in her own lies that she convinced herself I deserved it? I'll probably never know. But what I do know is this: sometimes the people who cause the most chaos are the ones who claim they're keeping the peace. That's the irony of communities like mine. The HOA promises order and unity, but all it takes is one person like Karen to turn it into a battlefield. Even now, whenever a new neighbor moves in across the street, I can't help but feel a flicker of paranoia. I watch their windows, wondering what kind of person they'll turn out to be. Because I've learned something important through all this. Peace doesn't come from the neighborhood you live in. It comes from the people who live there. And sometimes it only takes one to destroy it. As I lock my car each night now, I take one last look across the street where Karen's house still sits, empty, quiet, curtains drawn. A reminder of how far things went. A reminder that truth, though slow, always catches up. And most of all, a reminder that no matter how clean and perfect a neighborhood looks on the outside, there's always something lurking beneath the surface, something waiting for the right moment to break through the calm and turn peace into chaos again.